Hey everyone, and welcome back to Todos Santos. Today we're taking one last trip back to where it all started, the Old Town. And we're going to be building something inspired by La Fortaleza, the official residence of the governor of Puerto Rico. Let's go. Of course, there's a lot to say about a building as iconic as this one, but unfortunately we don't have too much time to get into that, so I will link some information in the description if you're interested in learning more about it. I think the thing that was most challenging about building this is that it's been adjusted and changed, the original building has, over the centuries. It's basically been in continuous use in various capacities for almost 500 years now. So there have been various additions and remodels and changes. And obviously there's no asset specifically made for this on the workshop. So I had to find something that at least resembled the details, and we can always, strip those details away to get some of the more plain sections, but some of the more adorned sections like this front part are in kind of this more, I guess it would be a neoclassical style. So I ended up choosing a set of assets by Xerix. These are Roman buildings in the neoclassical style, I suppose. I'm not too knowledgeable about architecture, but that's what I have gleaned from the description. And I think the details resemble the details on the front of La Fortaleza fairly well. So I just used PO to isolate certain parts of the assets. So we have this lower section and then these upper sections as well. And of course, these doors that I'm kind of turning into like little modular blocks that I can put together so we can get the proper shape. Now, one thing you might notice is that these colors are maybe not quite gaudy, but a little bit bright and vivid. And I chose these colors, the orange for the main surfaces of the wall and the green for the doors, because the uncited Wikipedia page, which we all know is the best source of information on the internet and never lies, says that the original Spanish fortifications on the island were colored salmon red with green doors. Now, this is probably a bit more of a salmon orange, but I just thought it would look cool. So whether or not that's true, I don't know, but this is the color scheme we're going with. To try to represent that there have been various additions to this building over the centuries, I wanted to have it be kind of an unusual shape, like they've been limited by the historic architecture that's already there and the confines of the road network and all that. So we're going to end up kind of with a rectangle with a couple of fortified towers on the end, which we're going to build later. And then there are a couple nubbins sticking off of it at various angles. So this is one of those additions here where the road runs underneath. I just punched a hole using PO into one of the door blocks that I made so that we could have a little area that originally would have served only pedestrians and maybe some horse-drawn carts or something like that. But now it's been retrofitted as a road where vehicles could drive through as well. So the original Fortaleza, obviously based on its name, means fortress, was a fortress. It was a defensive building. So as it's been turned into an administrative building, which it's basically been used for most of its history, these additions would represent that. So this wing over here it kind of faces the rest of the old town. So this would be the thing that everyone would see. So they make it a little bit fancier. They have this multi-level staircase leading up to the main entrance because this is what people would see. This is what they would want the citizens to be impressed by. So for this, I'm using the stone stairs prop pack by Armesto and the Monaco balustrades by Lost Gecko. Of course, all these assets that I've mentioned are linked in the description, assuming I remember to actually put those links in. Remind me if I haven't. Now that we have this whole facade, I came up with the idea that, well, we have this angled street here, so why not just angle this whole thing to match the street? That feels a little bit more natural than just having this random wall at a random angle to the road. It's actually pretty easy to select all the nodes in PO, use the rotate function to rotate them all, and then of course when you rotate something like that, it kind of messes up the corners here, so you have to just jiggle it around just a little bit to get everything to line up. Otherwise you're going to get weird clipping things and things sticking out everywhere. You don't want that, so just, yeah. Now at this point, we don't really have anything that looks at all like a building, so we need to flesh it out, just mirroring these assets and positioning them so they kind of line up with everything else, so we get something resembling that shape that I was talking about before. We also have these kind of weird angled roof things that adhere to the color change on the asset. They don't really fit in, and we're going to do a fully custom roof later on anyway, so I'm just lowering them down so that we have a nice flat surface to work with when we get to that. Two of the most iconic parts of this building are these two towers that overlook the bay. Of course, like I mentioned several times now, it was originally a defensive structure, and I think there was only one tower originally. It was just the tower and then the main rectangular part of the building. Second tower was added later on, so we're going to have both of those here. I'm using pretty much the same color for the towers, but I thought it looked a little weird just to have it completely orange, so I wanted to add this white stripe at the top. And I'm just using a second color rectangle to do that in PO and temporarily hiding the other ones just to make it a little bit easier to work with. And then same thing with the floor surface here, except it didn't look quite right to have that fully painted white. So I'm just going to lower the opacity on that one just to kind of lighten it up a little bit. And that way I think it looks a little bit more reasonable of a floor texture there. Obviously you're not going to paint the floor white. That's not going to last very long, so no one's going to bother to do that. What we are going to bother to do is size it up a few notches in PO because I just thought it looked a little bit small. And in the case of defending an island, I think size does matter. Of course, the original building has a central courtyard, so we're going to add another block of the building here and then just leave that rectangle in the middle. Obviously, it looks absolutely horrendous and plain and boring right now. We're going to fix that later after we add some battlements stretching between these two towers. So I'm just expanding it a little bit to better fit the space that we have, and then we're going to give it basically the same color treatment that we did for the towers. Now you might notice that there's a lot of messy little things here and there. It just doesn't look very good on this side. I'm going to go back and fix that, I think off camera, and just clean that up a little bit so it looks a little bit more uniform. But that basically involves kind of replacing each of these main buildings. It's basically the same thing we did before, except just a little bit more carefully, so I'm not going to show that. Now for the central patio type thing, I'm using the other set of Italian assets to kind of form this like cloister type thing in the middle. I don't know if you can quite tell from this angle, but these assets have kind of a nice arched walkway built into them. So connecting those up, fitting these corners together gives kind of a nice look to that. Earlier, I mentioned that we were going to change the details on the roof, so I'm just starting with this blank slate, basically replacing the roof completely with this set of roof networks by Ronix. I just love these, and I've been using them a lot recently, and we're going to continue to use them quite a bit in the next project of Todos Santos, but I'm not going to talk about that anymore at the moment. I love that you can adjust these with the node controller to widen them or angle them, and you can basically get them to fit just about any surface that you need to fit. I went back and forth. I tried some lighter colored ones at first, and they just didn't quite fit. I kind of like the contrast with the darker roof. I know that's not quite as in line with the visual themes of Todos Santos as the lighter ones, but I just think this one looks better overall. And anyway, we're not going to see too much of the roof because we're going to cover it up with a whole bunch of miscellaneous roof props. The real Fortaleza has a bunch of things running across the top of it. I assume it's like an HVAC system, AC, that kind of stuff. I really don't know how any of that works. But anyway, we're going to cover up the whole roof and add some solar panels as well. And while I was working on this, I decided that this patio or cloister or whatever it is needed a little bit of detailing, so we're just going to add some tiles and some plants and a nice little fountain in the center as well. So at this point, I really liked how the build was coming together, but it looked a little bit too top-heavy and not sprawling enough. So we're going to add yet another addition over here. And this would probably be, in current times, where the governor would actually live. So the other parts would be administration and offices and that kind of stuff. And this would be the apartment addition. And I thought it might be kind of cool to have a variation in the roof texture. I talked about how the dark one looks a little bit cooler overall, but I thought it might be a nice gesture to the real life roof, which is quite light colored, to have this addition be, maybe the roof was replaced more recently, and so it's just a different texture. And I think it looks kind of cool to have that further amount of contrast. And then of course, next to the apartments, we have a private garden. There's one of these in real life, so I thought I might as well do something resembling that. It's a little awkward that it backs up against the castle walls that I made 72 episodes ago and don't look very good. I even thought about going back and potentially replacing these and completely rebuilding them, but I think I can just tell that it would have been a horrible project that would have completely turned me off of this build. So I decided not to do that. And we're just going to leave them as they are. And I think that's kind of one of the major themes of Todos Santos is it's taken me so long to build this city that a lot of the stuff that I did a long time ago just doesn't look that good. So I think if I decide to fix certain things, I need to pick things that, one, are really bugging me, which these walls, I mean, they kind of bug me, but not that much, but also are fun to do again. And I don't think this sort of like messing around with layers of networks, doing kind of the same build that I already did, just that doesn't seem like something I want to spend my time doing. So we're just going to leave them, and we'll just have to deal with that. So with the private gardens all done, we just have a few more details on the building itself. I thought the base of the building looked a little bit plain, so I'm just going to go through and add some of these flower beds, which I think just add kind of a nice transition between the ground and the walls. And then we also have these seams here. I fixed most of them, but there was still this lingering one here, so I thought I'd add this random pipe acting as like a gutter, or a rain pipe running down from the gutter, just to cover that up. And then there's also a little utility meter there because there was a little space, and I thought, why not? I really like this asset. So we're going to put that there, and then we're going to move on to the surroundings. So I thought it was a little weird to have this brand new building that looks like it's fit into like this weird layout of roads and not have any buildings surrounding it. So of course we need to fill in this area that was originally grass that was just part of the park that surrounds the castle, and add some of these buildings. So I'm thinking that the buildings along the L shape of road that butt up against the Fortaleza would have been originally just random buildings that were there, but they've since been appropriated for more administrative use. So instead of adding another addition to the Fortaleza building, they've just taken over these nearby buildings. And that's going to be represented in some of the details that we're going to do later, but we'll get to that in just a second. First, we need to finish filling in this block. I'm trying to go with more of these skinny, low-rise buildings. I think I probably went a little bit too high density for the old town for the most part. There are probably too many 3- and 4-story buildings, and even taller ones than that. So I wanted to kind of represent that this is the older part of the old town since it's right next to the castle. So we just have these much shorter, smaller buildings. Of course, adjusting most of them with PO to fit into the road network and to fit in with each other to make sure that they take up the entire block for the most part. I actually really enjoy doing this with PO. I think it's a lot of fun. And one cool thing is that you end up getting these kind of weird alleys in between. So I just am taking some tile decals and covering those up so that you get the appearance that there's like an alley going down here, so you get to access some of these buildings from the back. Of course, after doing those, a lot of these buildings are PO, so I wanted to come and make them functional, adding some residential blocks for the houses and some office blocks for the Fortaleza. After adding all these buildings, we have this kind of awkward space in between, so I had to figure out how to detail that. I started with the easy stuff, like right up against the Fortaleza. We have this little bench area, which I took from a spot I saw on Google Earth Street View. There's like a little patio with a bench surrounded by some flowers and trees and stuff. Kind of a nice little spot, so I decided to make something along those lines. And then we also have this balcony. So I figured why not have the governor, or I guess in this case, in the world of Todos Santos, this would be the mayor's office. So we have the mayor on this balcony overlooking the street and all these buildings here, doing some sort of speech or something like that. As for the rest of the details, I thought I'd give it just a little bit of breathing room by adding in a nice landscaped area here. I'm adding these curbs with IMT. It's kind of a small detail, but I think it really helps these kind of landscaped areas of grass stand out from the rest of it, and I think it's a detail worth doing for this kind of build. Now, of course, in the modern world, we're going to need a little parking lot, even for this beautiful historic governor's mansion, or mayor's mansion. Yeah. So I decided to have that down here and combine it with a little security office that protects one of the entrances. We're going to add some much smaller gates for the other areas as well. So I guess you have 3 points of entry here. This would be the main one. Like if you were going on a tour or something, you would probably enter over there. And then over here, this is kind of just for official use only. So if someone's trying to get in here and they have not realized that this is the wrong entrance, so the security guard is turning them away. I really love this iron gate asset. Unfortunately, it's terrain conforming, so I can't turn it into a procedural object, so I kind of have to cheat a little bit and try to angle it in such a way that it fits with these skinny roads, because I think it's built for the vanilla width small roads, not these tiny ones. Obviously, this whole campus where this building is located is going to be controlled access, so I tried to have that make sense by adding in a whole length of wall that runs around the perimeter, and the only points of entry are really these gates. So this wall runs along a little path here, and then on the other side of the wall, to the left here, I'm going to add a small public park that kind of mirrors the private gardens on the other side of the building. So I kept putting this off the whole build. I really had no idea what to do in this kind of awkward space here. So I ended up deciding just to add some more buildings, but they are in kind of a weird arrangement and a weird shape because of the strangely shaped plot of land, of course. So I thought that kind of added a little bit of interest. Maybe these would be some more additional offices for the administration. Watching this back now, I'm thinking maybe I should have just done another landscaped area, or maybe like a little private plaza. I don't know. But anyway, this is what we got. I think it ends up looking nice enough. I just don't know if it really makes sense to have more buildings here, especially since the whole point of having this facade is so that people can look at it from the town. So maybe I'll go back and change that. That might be one of the things that I think is worth going back to fix. Not sure about that. Let me know what you think about this little area, if you think it should be turned into a plaza or a little landscaped area or something else altogether. Please leave a comment if you have a thought on that. I do like this little detail that I add, though, which is these hedges running along the base of the stairwell here. I think that looks kind of nice, and it's a nice transition from the blank wall of the stairwell to the tiled alley. And now we have this block, which I've already changed a few times in the course of the series, but I think this kind of landscaped walkway area just doesn't really fit with what we have now. It's kind of killing the vibe of this being the older part of the old town. Like maybe this one giant building was added in later, on top of like a park or something like that, but it seems like the area around it should be kind of this older, smaller building that I was talking about before. So we're going to come in and quickly fill in these blocks with some more buildings in a similar style to before. And now that we're done with that block, it's time to add just a few last details. Of course, as I was doing the surrounding builds, I realized that this area needed a few more details that I had missed. This seems to usually happen when you do a detailed build like this. You come back later and realize you forgot to do half the details that you had originally planned. So we just have some steps leading up to most of the doors. And then I also wanted to add a little bit of a thingy up here. That's the architectural term, if you didn't know. So I'm just isolating that with PO, merging all the other nodes together, and then bringing it up here. And I think that adds a nice little cap to this kind of main facade of the building. And of course, we also need some flags. It is a government building after all, and some lighting as well. So I'm just adding these lovely little wall lanterns next to each door and passageway as needed. I think this kind of wall lighting, if it's spaced out properly, just adds a really nice atmosphere at night to these kinds of builds. Of course, we can't rely totally on these. We do have like these walls along here in the garden, just adding some normal lights sticking up out of the hedges. Normal, I guess. That seems kind of normal. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Moving on, we have something that I've pretty much been thinking about doing since the beginning of the series. Now, I've heard and seen pictures of the road leading up to La Fortaleza often having umbrellas hung from it, which is kind of a unique and interesting detail, I think. So I found the one workshop item that had the right kind of umbrella built into it, which is this really funny umbrella lamp guy by Borg 2003, link in the description if you want to download that. Great asset, but I used PO to isolate just the umbrella, and we're going to go through and change its color and just add some variation to that and string them all along these string lights so we get that kind of effect. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Todos Santos. This is actually going to be the last normal episode of Todos Santos. Don't worry, we still have more videos to come, but they're going to focus on what ends up being a very big project within a project, if that makes any sense. So we're going to be embarking on that journey starting next episode. These episodes are going to be quite a bit harder for me to edit and put together and all that, so there might be a short break before you get the next video, but don't worry, there's more coming. I really hope you enjoyed your time in the Old Town today, and I can't wait to see you on what comes next for Todos Santos. Bye-bye!
Frente a un frío invierno, a pesar de que afuera florecía el jazmín, sentí vibrar tu voz y llegó mi primavera, se encendió mi corazón.